you gorgeous individuals, it's Javier, and today I'm going to be talking about Queens of Geek by Jen Wilde. I have heard brilliant reviews about this book from all of my friends, and I've seen a lot of talk about it on book Twitter, but I haven't really seen a lot of people talking about it on booktube, and I don't really understand why, because it was easily a 5-star read for me. So I thought that I would talk about it today and hopefully convince you all to read it. Queens of Geek is a YA contemporary that follows the story of 3 best friends, Charlie, Jamie, and Taylor, and it's told in alternating points of view between Charlie and Taylor, and Charlie is a bisexual Chinese-American character, while Taylor is an autism spectrum character, and the 3 friends have traveled from Australia to America so that they can attend SuperCon, which is kind of like Comic-Con or cons that we have in our life. The entire premise is that Charlie is a guest here because she's a YouTuber slash actress, while Taylor and Jamie are fans. So it's really about being a fan, I guess, because the entire book takes place during the weekend at this con. I loved the story. From my description, I hope you can tell that it's a diverse novel with 2 diverse MCs and 2 love interests of color and 1 lesbian love interest, and there's another autism spectrum character that's introduced throughout the story. Plus, the plot is extremely relatable, I think, to a lot of readers, because if you are an avid reader the way I am, you'll probably identify yourself as a fan. So it's really about being a fan, and it kind of normalizes the idea of being a fan, which I think is really important because it's a completely normal thing for teens or young adults to be. So I completely enjoyed the novel for a variety of reasons, some of those just listed, and I'll be going more into depth about why in this review. The first aspect of this novel that kind of sucked me in, besides the rave reviews I had heard from my friends, was the writing. The writing in this novel was so brilliantly done. I really felt like I could get into the mindset of the 2 characters when I was reading in their points of view, and they have very differing personalities. Charlie is much more outgoing and outspoken, while Taylor is not quite as outgoing, and I really felt like I could get into the characters. I never felt like there was a point where I was jolted out of the story or didn't understand anything. From page 1 through page 262, I was absolutely sucked in writing-wise. Character-wise, I've already pointed out how diverse the story is to me, which is something that all of you know is really important to me, but I also really enjoyed the complexity to all of the characters. I personally could relate to both the main characters for my own reasons. I could relate to Taylor because I myself suffer from anxiety, whereas I am not on the autism spectrum. I could relate to the points where Taylor mentioned having to deal with anxiety, and I could relate to Charlie because, like Charlie, I'm a YouTuber, so I had aspects of her that really resonated with me, but I think that all of the characters were extremely complex, and for this reason everyone can find their own personal relation to the characters and something personal that attracts them to the characters. Relationship-wise, I absolutely adored the friendships and romantic relationships in this novel. The friendships were portrayed so well, and I think that they were a great example of what being a friend or being a best friend should be, and how to support your friends and really be there for them. Because I really felt that way with the 3 main characters, and with the way I could see Charlie and Taylor talking about each other, I really felt like that's what it meant to be a true friend, and I think that it's a great example of how to be a good friend. And romantic relationship wise, I absolutely adored both of the relationships in this novel. One of them was actually a female by female romance. There were points where I actually squealed when romance things were going on. I just shipped both the ships so hard. And I also think that there was the mention of unhealthy relationships that 2 of the characters had been in, and this really showed a great example of how you shouldn't compromise yourself to be with someone you love romantically. So basically, the relationships were portrayed just as well as the characters were portrayed. Plot-wise, I really loved the premise of this novel. As I said, this entire novel just normalized the idea of being a fan, and that's something I really think could be done more in YA literature, because a lot of kids reading it, or young adults reading it, are people who are fans, and to normalize that and make that seem normal and really create this novel that I think so many people can relate with was just a brilliant idea on the author's part, and I'm just really happy that a novel like this exists in the world. But the thing I loved most about this novel were kind of the good morals, I guess, taught in it. That's not necessarily the right word, but for lack of a better term, I'm gonna go with it. First off, Taylor, the character who was on the autism spectrum, was done so well. As I said, I myself am not on the spectrum, so I wouldn't speak from personal aspects because that would be wrong, but I myself do suffer from severe anxiety, and the points where Taylor talked about dealing with anxiety were portrayed really well, and I felt like that was a really real way of portraying it from my experiences in my life. And I mentioned that another character on the autism spectrum was introduced in the novel, and she and Taylor had an amazing conversation that I think was just really enlightening to me. I'm not gonna say that I read this novel and I'm now an expert on autism, because that in no way is true, but I really think that this novel did give me some sort of eye-opening and a basic understanding of what it's like for an individual on the spectrum from her own point of view. I also mentioned this novel taught good morals in how not to be in an unhealthy relationship, and I think that it also taught good morals in girls supporting girls. There's a point where Charlie herself calls out slut shaming, and she notices that she kind of did it, but then she went back and she was like, wait, that's wrong. And I think that's really important, because in a lot of YA novels with female main characters, girls supporting girls is not the premise. It's a lot of girls hating on girls, and that's something that I really hope changes in literature as we go forth, and this is a great example of how it does change and how it's even brought up in the novel. Taylor's character is fat, and she gets called fat, and then she writes this brilliant post, I guess, on accepting herself, and I just really loved it. I really thought that the way body positivity was done in this novel was done so well, and even though it wasn't a giant section, it was still there and it was still important. So overall, I think that this novel had those kind of good themes sprinkled through it. But of course, you don't go in reading some sort of heavy novel, but it still carries important aspects. So there's really not a single thing I disliked in this novel. If I could give it 10 out of 5 stars, I would. I absolutely adored it, and I really hope you will pick it up. And if you have already read it, be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below, because I'd love to hear if you enjoyed it as much as I did. Also, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe, because I post new videos every week, so you don't want to miss them, because who doesn't love spending like 10 minutes talking about books weekly? As usual, all my social media and my Goodreads will be in the description below, so if you want to follow me or add me anywhere else, you definitely can. I hope you're having a lovely day or night wherever you are. Please remember that you're beautiful and you deserve the world, and I will see you next Sunday with a brand new video. Goodbye!